The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's March 17th. It is St. Patrick's Day. It is a Tuesday, so you can share your Tuesday thoughts, your St. Patty's thoughts, your soccer thoughts, your non-soccer thoughts with us on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. Lots of stuff to get into. There's actually some soccer news to discuss, and it's breaking right now. The Euro 2020 that was going to be in 12 different countries this summer has been postponed until next year. And reporting out of South America is that the Copa America will follow that into 2021. That opens up some doors for leagues to get finished on a somewhat normal schedule, and I think keep the traditional soccer calendar worldwide going. There's still a lot to be seen if that's going to be possible. But, John, this isn't exactly a surprise. The Norway FA, I guess, did not follow the instructions of the UEFA meeting that is going on and maybe took their phone in or a tablet, and they tweeted this out. And they're the ones who have broken the news that the Euros are going to be postponed.
UEFA has decided, and this is quote, UEFA has decided the Euro should be postponed until 2021. It will be played from 11 June to 11 July next year.
Who are you quoting again?
The Norwegian FA tweet.
Okay, wanted to make sure.
The Norwegian FA tweet their own selves. And so what that does is it just slides everything, but the Women's European Championship is scheduled from 7 July to August 1st in England next year. So you have that now as a part of the discussion.
Well, no, hold on. That's only 4 days of overlap, so that's actually better than you would have thought. The Nations League is going to have to get scrapped. There's just, you can't do it because you've got the Euros. The Euro under 21, stuff like that. The World Club Cup, probably scrapped. There's just no way around it. And you're going to have to go back to what it's been and wait until, I don't know when, to do the expanded World Club Cup. You're going to have to push that back to where it's always been in the calendar. There's just no other way in Europe. That's just how it's going to have to go. But I was worried about the Euros and the Women's Euros being in the same year, but with only 4 days of overlap, that's fine. You can make that work.
And also, according to The Guardian, emerged Tuesday that UEFA last week had canceled its hotel bookings in Copenhagen. One particular hotel had told Reuters UEFA had booked 80% of the rooms in this one hotel, canceled them a little over a week ago. And they were booked on behalf of the Denmark team, who is usually based there. So that was another sign on the wall before the Norwegian FA took to their tweet this morning.
I mean, it's not exactly a surprise. I don't think anybody is, blown away by this one. So it's what's going to have to be done because, as we've talked about, you've got some really complicated situations when it comes down to getting leagues finished. And, the head of the Players Union has warned UEFA that jobs are on the line here. And that's the biggest issue is the financial cost of all of this. And the European Championship, the Euros don't drive that. The leagues, the domestic leagues do. And they have to take precedence. And you have to try to give them every opportunity to complete their season this year. You have to. And UEFA is doing the right thing by not being bullheaded here and just driving through and saying, no, this is our competition and we're going to play it and blah, blah, blah. So now UEFA's got other things to deal with. This was the easy one. This was the obvious one. You push the European Championships back. That buys you some more time. But now what? Because you've got a Champions League to finish. You've got a Europa League to finish. Those are UEFA competitions. You've got all the domestic leagues to finish, or at least in some form or fashion declare complete. Or, I mean, as some people have said, which I honestly do not understand the reasoning behind this. Just declare it null and void like it didn't happen. I don't think that's the way out of this. I really don't. There's got to be another way. Some of the things that are out there about how to make this work, Giorgio Marchetti, who is the director of competitions for UEFA, he's been modeling different ways of completing the Champions League, completing the Europa League. One possibility being discussed is that the remaining round of 16 games, 4 in the Champions League, all 8 second-leg ties in the Europa League, if you can get those played, if you can complete that round of 16, then quarterfinals are 1 game instead of 2. And then the idea that Marchetti has floated is that the semifinalists would meet in Istanbul for the Champions League, Gdansk for the Europa League, where the final's going to be, and you play the semis and the final over one weekend, over a long weekend. So maybe a Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday would be the ideal. Hopefully they wouldn't try to do like Friday, Sunday, and Thursday, Saturday, but who knows? You might not have a whole lot of choice here. That seems reasonable. If you can get it done, that would be one way to make it even, make it, balanced. You'd have to play those quarterfinal games in neutral sites to keep some kind of semblance of competitive balance, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and no, if you can figure out a way to get it into that particular time frame and you can just sit there and get it done and give yourself those kinds of, if you can trim it to those particular elements and then get it done, I agree with you. That does make the most sense when it comes to getting some kind of a resolution so you can work toward the new markers that you have for competitions in 2021. So I think that, when you were talking about it yesterday, it's the notion of working backwards. And if you can sit there and say, all right, let's reset our dates, push things forward into 2021, what do we need to do now to get to those particular dates? And so you get the easiest one done first, and then you try to tackle all the other stuff to get back to where we are with June and July of 2021 with the Euros.
Yeah, I mean, that's just where you're at. You've got to try to get these things as complete as you possibly can. And the reason why, look, it's money. I mean, you've got situations where Jonas Baer Hoffman, who is the general secretary of FIFPro, which is the union of players in Europe. Actually, I think FIFPro might be worldwide. Sorry about that. Baer Hoffman is saying that FIFPro is already seeing contracts terminated of players who are at clubs where finances just look that they're not there. And when you've already lost money from tickets and selling and hosting matches, clubs are terminating contracts. I haven't heard of any of that. I would assume it's at much smaller clubs than we're accustomed to hearing about over here. So if that's happening, it's only going to continue to grow. Baer Hoffman said, in a matter of weeks, we could have insolvencies and massive layoffs, not only of players, but among hundreds of thousands of people who work in football and whose jobs are now on the line. Our membership includes many players who are not hugely well paid. We all know how tightly many clubs' budgets are managed, so the social and economic consequences could be profound if we don't manage this crisis properly. And that's 100% legit. This is the scary part of this, is that now organizations that were created and designed to look out for the well-being of the game as a whole, who have not traditionally acted in that way. They have acted in a way of making as much money as possible, and go ask Michel Platini about that. Go ask Sepp Blatter about that. And, yeah, go ask plenty of people who have run CONMEBOL about that, and CONCACAF, and every other federation about that, and organization. And they really haven't done that too much. Well, now they have to. Now they don't have a choice because people's livelihoods and the health of the game is on the line. And it's fingers crossed that these organizations can actually figure out that change. It's not about making as much money as possible and putting as much of it in your pocket. It is about ensuring that clubs stay in business. It's about ensuring that players and front office personnel have a place to work. Like, these are the things that are now important, and it's something that is a little scary if you've followed the game and you've followed all of the issues in the game over the years. And now you're going to have people try to work together. And it's scary to think that some of the people that you're asking to do that are ones that have been involved in some very corrupt business practices and poor business practices and selfish business practices, and now they got to think about others. Dietmar Hopp, who is the owner of Hoffenheim, or the patron of Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga. You can't have an owner who owns more than half of the team. But Hopp is the one who has funded Hoffenheim's rise to the Bundesliga. And just a few weeks ago the match was stopped against Bayern Munich because of the banners that were being held and the chants that were being chanted against him, because, we've talked about it a little bit on Soccer Over There. The Bundesliga has really fought against the modernization of soccer, especially in terms of ownership. RB Leipzig is a very controversial club because, again, they are not operating in a traditional Bundesliga way. Hoffenheim was the first one. So you had people attacking Dietmar Hopp, and it was honestly very embarrassing for a club like Bayern Munich to have that happen in their stadium. Now you've got Dietmar Hopp, who's the one who's making sense in all of this. You've got him talking to Kicker in Germany, and he said, football can't disconnect itself from society, and we would do well if we don't claim a special role in what is an absolute crisis and exceptional situation. And he talked about wealthier clubs helping less well-off teams, which, look, it's going to be necessary. Hopp said, "It's the hour of solidarity. The strong help the weak. I hope this obvious feeling of solidarity is a consensus among Bundesliga protagonists. We must also reinforce the solidarity financially in a way that finds a solution for clubs who are existentially affected more than others. I absolutely would have sympathy for the idea of a solidarity fund so as to help in this exceptional situation. Nothing like this should be off the table." You've got a club, not even an owner, a club patron saying this in Germany. These are the things that have to be said from UEFA, from FIFA, from CONMEBOL, from CONCACAF, from the Confederation in Africa, from the Asian FA, from the Oceania FA, but especially from FIFA. These are the things that are going to be necessary right now, and Dietmar Hopp gets it.
We've seen in stories that we've talked about on Soccer Over There about, well, specifically, we can just go ahead and use the British example, the English example of teams in the Premier League who get relegated. And they're in the championship now, and they're struggling in the championship. And the article that came out in The Athletic about Bournemouth, and if Bournemouth were to be relegated, how it could be disastrous for the club on the whole, and the club could disappear as we know it, considering how much money that they take from strictly TV revenue and throw it into their day-to-day salaries, not operating money, but just straight-up salaries. Theirs is not the only story that's out there. And for the future of leagues and their full memberships, which could be completely and totally in jeopardy with how financing isn't, with what we're seeing with these gaps in time. And what we're seeing in Germany with what we've heard from there, with the quotes about Bundesliga 2 not having completed rosters of teams. For national bodies to ignore this going forward is disastrous for the game on the whole. So I think that what you've got to do is take these notes of what could be, find a way to stop it. How do you do that? You invest from a national level back into the clubs and into the game in and of itself. So this is that one siren call. This is the one where it's like, all right, here's the deal. Pay attention now, or the game as we know it isn't going to exist anymore. And for all of those organizations that you mentioned, from CAF to CONCACAF, from UEFA and FIFA to Oceania, all of these places in between, they all have to pay attention and put their own pockets aside for the betterment of the game going forward. This is that one shot to get it right.
I mean, that's even taken something that is separate from this, but it's a reality. You've got clubs that have been run like, I don't even know what to call these things, run incredibly poorly, not following any business practice you would ever try to follow in real life. And these clubs think that's how they can operate, spending more money than they bring in on a regular basis, with the hope that they hit the right lottery ticket and it all balances out. Doesn't always happen. We've seen it over the years before all this. Well, now a lot of those clubs that have been run like a, small-time pub that is just hoping for the big holiday take-in on revenue, well, those are the clubs that are going to get hit the hardest here. And you've got to figure out who can be bailed out and how you can handle it. And I'll be curious to see if Dietmar Hopp is able to, I think, knock some sense into the heads of the Bundesliga and create something like that, and how other countries and leagues follow. I mean, we're seeing it with everything these days in terms of how to respond to things. Some people think they know better than others, and not everybody's going to follow that kind of stuff. The game's going to look dramatically different when all this is said and done. I mean, life is, obviously, but the game is as well, because there are going to be changes in the lower divisions of the game, because there's going to be clubs that can't survive this. There's going to be, an opportunity for the sport to reimagine what it can look like. I mean, we talked about it on Soccer Over There last night. It's wild that in Major League Soccer, depending on timelines and stuff, you might end up seeing a season that could, branch over the holiday period and be almost like a European type calendar. And then in Europe, you might end up seeing a season that is the other way around and becomes a calendar year kind of thing. That's what Wayne Rooney proposed. Who knows? Everybody's got different situations that are coming up, but I think everything can look really different on the outside. That is not always a bad thing. That can create an opportunity to break out of just tradition that doesn't help you, and it gives you an opportunity to reimagine what it can be. The scary part is that the lifeblood of the game in any country is the grassroots. Even in a country like the United States, where you don't have promotion relegation, it's still the lifeblood of it. We've talked about it on this show for years. Atlanta United is a great, great story, but the most important part of it is that you've got new youth leagues, new teams, new adult leagues, new things popping up all over the South, in some ways influenced by what's happened in Atlanta with Atlanta United's success. That's the true growth. That's what's important here. And now you're going to see this in all countries, and the United States is included in this, where some of those grassroots clubs, where the margins are very thin, are going to need help. They're going to need some kind of help to get through this, and nobody really knows what that's going to look like yet. All the way down from FIFA to the Continental Confederations to the national FAs in countries like the U.S., where you have state associations. Things have to be thought through, and leadership has to come to the fore right now as we're seeing in the United States, that is a tricky proposition. And there are plenty of other countries where there are leaders that are coming to the fore, and maybe they're not the leaders that you want coming to the fore at this moment.
And yeah, so I think that this is going to be the example where you're going to have countries and federations and states and state organizations. This is that self-examination. And without the help from the top, it's going to be a real quick examination of, well, can we function? Can we not? If we don't have any assistance from higher levels, then the answer is a no. And that is a poor sign for the game, because then that development that you've had won't be able to continue to flourish. And I think that Scout
El Chiringuito TV, which is a great source for all over the world, but especially in Europe, they are reporting that the Champions League final will be delayed until June 27th this year. The Europa League final will be on June 24th. So that's right up against that June 30th kind of end of the seasonal year that most leagues are operating on. Right.
Is there any note on locations and into formats like we were discussing at the top?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I mean, locations are booked. Like, those are booked. All right, hold on. I'm seeing the 26th of June now as well. This is from Leandro Buonsante. He says Europa League, Champions League, June 24 and 26, a month later than scheduled. They are still scheduled to be played in Gdansk and Istanbul, but of course everything will depend on timelines going forward.
Okay. But no, this is that time of self-examination for everybody. And do you want the game to continue its betterment? Do you want it to continue to grow and evolve? This is where everybody has to pitch in.
Yeah, and we will see how the game does that, because it's rather complicated. Let's talk about one aspect of how it's complicated. And I don't know why the timeline is what it is here, but this is from the Daily Mail. The Premier League is at risk of breaching its £3 billion TV contract for this season if the competition is not finished by the end of July. They are committed to delivering a completed program by July 31st. The new contract for the 2020-2021 season is set to kick in on August 1st. So I have no idea why they created their programming year different than the year of competition. But anyway.
Fiscal?
I guess, but it still makes no sense because of the competitive year, which would be the smarter way to do it. Okay, so right now, all 20 clubs have 9 or 10 matches left. That could mean as much as £750 million of income is lost. That's one reason why the league wants to play in some form or fashion, and that's one reason why, something we talked about on Soccer Over There last night, I think it's obvious that the idea of going from normal competition to playing behind closed doors to shutting everything down was a stupid progression. You've got teams with, like Valencia, with I think 35% of their group that traveled to play Atalanta, or to play Inter, sorry, this was even before that, have come down sick with the coronavirus. So playing behind closed doors at the stage they did made no sense. Will it make sense? And it's a different situation coming off the other end of it when you get control of the spread of the virus and when you're able to manage it more effectively. Can you start back with behind closed doors? Can you present a safe environment for players, referees, technical staffs, training staffs, essential game day staff to get a game in for TV purposes? Because, I mean, it's easy to say, like, oh, well, it's just a sport, it doesn't really matter, whatever. £750 million of income is what you're talking about here. That's a big deal. Those programming hours are a big deal. And as we have seen all over all of our Twitter timelines and Facebook timelines and Instagram timelines and however else you communicate with people, people miss sports. It's a huge unifier. And to have it back would be amazing. So are you going to be able to safely, because that's the number one issue here, even more than that kind of money we're talking about and that power of, just helping society, are you going to be able to present it safely? Are you going to be able to figure this out and get these games in and maybe do some of them behind closed doors if you're the Premier League to be able to get this done? Can that be done? It's too early to know, but that would seem like the obvious first step, because if you got to get a season completed by the end of July, you're probably going to have to do that with 9 or 10 games left. That's not just a couple of games. That's going to be difficult to get it all done.
You're talking 25% of the entire value of the contract. I would think that there is some kind of wording, force majeure, something along that line. You would think that there's insurance that's attached to it. But, and the other thing that stuck in my mind as you're sitting there and you're saying, about player safety and having matches played and all that kind of stuff. If it's behind closed doors, then for me, the first thing now that is popping into my head is fans aren't just going to stay at home. They're still going to want to be a part of the process. They're still going to make their processionals and make their way to...
No, I think it's going to be different. It was one thing before all of this, when people were doing that, because I think there were a lot of people in denial. We saw it in Paris, for example, when PSG played behind closed doors. Coming after all of this, I think there's going to be a different attitude. I do give people a little bit of credit for seeing what's going on in the world today and saying, you know what, I'm not going to go be a moron, because everybody's told me for months that I was a moron when I did it the first time. I hope. Maybe I'm just naive. I also would think that one of the caveats would be that you'd be able to secure that area and prevent that from happening. Police, whatever, to be able to do it. Or here's the other thing you do. It's behind closed doors. It doesn't matter where you're playing. You play them in different parts of the country. Okay, you don't want to have Liverpool and I can't remember what. Let's just say they play Everton in one of those games. I have no idea. You're not going to do that in Liverpool. Go do it in London. Go do it in Newcastle. Do it somewhere else, so you can eliminate some of that, because it doesn't matter where you play it.
Make it difficult for those fans to be present in that situation.
Yeah, whatever it takes. I would like to think that people will not be stupid after seeing what's been going on. Because that's 2 months, 3 months away, easy.
And we still have 11 countries who are still playing matches, by the way.
Yeah, and there's different situations in all of those countries. That's a big thing to keep in mind with all of this. Is not every country is on the same timeline in dealing with it. China is hopefully going to get their Super League back underway in a month. They were one of the first to deal with this. So can others see like basically a 3-month shutdown? Can others see, all right, well, if that worked there and can we do 3 months? Can we make it work? Maybe. Who knows? But every country's in a different situation. Some countries haven't really been hit with it yet. Some have, and some are being stupid, and some have finally come to their senses. And look, nobody knew how to handle this from a sporting perspective. I get it. Nobody knew what was right and what was wrong, and it's incredibly difficult. I don't want to throw shade completely at Costa Rica, for example, for playing right now. I don't know the situation with the virus in Costa Rica. It'll happen because it's happening everywhere, and it's happening when people travel or have contact with anybody who did travel. So it'll happen. Maybe they can get ahead of it. Maybe now that they haven't really had it, they can shut down earlier in the league part of it, the sporting part of it anyway, the part that we can really get into, and hopefully they can prevent it from getting worse. Other countries haven't had it that bad, and they've thought, well, we could just keep going for a little bit longer. And again, because of all these financial implications. I mean, it's not an easy decision to say, yeah, just shut down the business. Just shut it down. It'll be fine. That's not easy for teams to do, because there's some teams and there's some leagues that they're afraid they're not going to survive if they do that. So yeah. I get it. I understand. It's hard. I think now you've got enough countries that are dealing with it. I mean, Argentina passed that bar a while back. They should have shut down earlier than they did. Like Costa Rica, I don't know where they're at with it. Turkey has just started reporting numbers. I don't think they, at least yesterday, hadn't gotten to 100 identified cases yet. I don't know how they managed to prevent that when everybody else in Europe's been dealing with it, but it is what it is. Russia's not reporting anything, so who knows how many cases they have, and they're just operating as business as usual. Who knows? But every country's going to have to deal with it different, because every league, every set of teams is going to have a different set of challenges, and who knows when we're going to get back on a normal timeline. I wonder if in the Premier League situation, especially in other leagues that have these kinds of big TV deals that are a huge source of revenue that you have to really think about when you create a plan to get back to action. Can you ease back into action with closed-door matches? And how can you make them safe? That's going to have to be something that's looked at.
And, we talked about teams that are dodgy financially. They're going to want to get those matches played to satisfy the contract so they can have that TV revenue and get that slice.
Something else into it, because teams that are dodgy financially probably need a lot more than just doing a game where you're going to get part of your TV contract. They need the gate. They need the gate revenue, and that's a different conversation. So they would actually not want to play behind closed doors. They would want to play in front of a crowd that is buying tickets and buying drinks and buying shirts and all of that. So that's a different level of conversation.
Yeah, but I would think at the beginning of this, they would take the beginning of those matches getting played under the understanding we're
talking primarily in the top flight. I'm not talking about that. We're talking across the board right now. I mean, how many teams in the Premier League are in dodgy financial situations at the moment? Not too many, because of this TV money coming in. The ones that are dodgy are the ones that are going to get relegated, and then the conversation changes. That's
and then you've
different.
Got Championship, League One, and League Two.
There's no TV money to worry about.
Yeah, who really rely on those gate receipts and the game day, all those game day revenues.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's exactly it, because there's two different conversations here. Newcastle United, for example, just pulling a club out of the thin air. They want to get games played, period. If there's fans there, great. They got to get games played because they've got $750 million as a league tied up in a TV contract where they got to complete what they promised. They have a very different conversation than Sheffield Wednesday, again, pulling a club out of thin air, who does not have the same level of TV commitment and money and attachment there. They need gate revenue. Out of 9-10 games left, and there's probably more with championship teams, you've got teams that have 5, 6, 7 home games left. They need that money desperately. They could care less about playing behind closed doors. They don't want to. They want fans in the stands spending money. They need that money. That's two very different sets of needs. And that's two very different economic drivers that, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the Premier League starts behind closed doors and the others wait. I have no idea. But those are two completely different conversations.
Yeah, just burning the numbers really quickly. The championship has 9 matches left in their
Everybody?
season. They've already, yeah, everybody.
Wow, I'm surprised they're all in the same number of games.
Yep. League One, because of the Bolton and Bury situation, everybody's hovering around 34, 35 matches played, and the natural unevenness of that. So you're also looking at 9 to go if you've played your full schedule and you haven't touched Bolton and Bury yet. And then League Two, as your example there, they're halfway through match week 36, 37. So you're somewhere in that neighborhood of 9 or 10 left.
And that's, roughly half of those at home. That's a lot of gate revenue for those teams down the line a little bit. I would assume most European leagues are in that same ballpark of games left. There's probably some that might have a couple more. Italy's going to be one that's a real challenge because of the number of games they've missed. These are complicated situations. Different countries are going to have different TV deals, different TV promises, different things they have to get done for their TV contract. Others, and even in some countries, it's going to be about split between which one is more important. You got to have the gate revenue. You have to have the gate revenue. England is probably the one that would be the most comfortable, and Germany, because they've mentioned it. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge mentioned it at Bayern Munich. They would be more comfortable playing behind closed doors to get things done. Others are going to fight to get games played in front of crowds. UEFA would be fine with getting games played behind closed doors just to get games played. But a lot of countries, a lot of leagues, especially when you get into second divisions, they have to have normal game days because they need that money. They need that match day revenue.
Was from the Associated Press yesterday, the CEO of the German league, Christian Seifert. And this was before UEFA had made the decision that they made this morning. He said that he expected a UEFA meeting Tuesday to make it possible for national leagues to plan club games for May or June. And then that would most certainly require UEFA to postpone or cancel the European Championship. So Seifert quoted as saying, "I assume that the national leagues will have more flexibility from tomorrow."
Yeah, I mean, there was no surprise this was going to happen. This was, pretty obvious as what needed to happen. It's been talked about for a couple of weeks now. So you've got more room in the calendar to work with, and you're going to have to take it. And England has until July 31st, in TV terms anyway, to get things done. Others might have till June 30th. And even England, I mean, you've got, as we talked about last night on Soccer Over There, just under 70 players who are out of contract on June 30th. Are you going to basically add a month to all those contracts to extend them to just keep the current season going? Or are you going to run into a situation where teams have players who go out of contract and they're not available unless you sign them to a new deal? I don't know. It's going to get complicated. But England, according to the TV side, has until July 31st to get its season completed. Most are going to be operating under the idea of getting their season completed by June 30th. And I would think that England would want to do that, if at all possible, to try to keep things at least somewhat organized. But at least on the TV side of it, they've got an extra month to work with.
Yeah. We have folks who have chimed in on various things on Twitter this morning as we wait for things to continue to develop. Is there anything else on your timeline before we hit this one?
No, let's go ahead.
Let's see. Going back to discussions yesterday, Kevin from Charlotte was catching up on yesterday's show. And he has, speaking of the Beckham effect, he says he was at Home Depot Center for that first appearance, the game against Chelsea, and it was his first MLS game. Got hooked for a while and then faded away since there wasn't any local or regional team to keep interest. He says he did follow the Dynamo for a while. They had some fun teams with D. Rostu and Chang. He says, anyways, Curious as to what your first MLS game was and if there were any teams you followed prior to Atlanta United. Hashtag Tuesday Thoughts. Be safe and be smart.
The first one. I mean, I was all in on this league when it was an idea of where teams were going to be. And I remember I was in college and was coming home for the weekend and watched the game with an old friend I played high school soccer with. And it was DC San Jose. I mean, that was the first game I watched. I watched a whole bunch of games that first season. All the national games. They had Sunday afternoon games on Univision. 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon games at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas is cruel and unusual punishment for players, but they did it because of TV. It was bad. Watched games on satellite, watched all kinds of games, watched the final that year. I followed DC the most closely up until Atlanta United getting launched because they were the closest team. I think Columbus might actually be somewhat closer in terms of mileage, but DC was the closest. I loved their branding. I think they were the ones at the very beginning who got it right, and others have worked in toward that traditional type of idea that DC had. Their kits looked traditional, not a ripoff, but traditional. They didn't have crazy colors that you had to create names for. They didn't have mutant bats on their logo like the Tampa Bay Mutiny, which made no sense. They didn't have nonsense like that. It was traditional. It was DC United, and it was black and red, and the kits they looked good. Like, it was all good. And my favorite player at the time, because the position I played in high school, was John Harkes. Harkes was a national team player that I liked his game going back to the 1990 World Cup. I went to Sheffield Wednesday and scored a goal of the year in England. Then came back to play for DC United, and that was the team I followed because of that. And then getting to see them, they were a really fun team to watch in the early days with Marco Echeverri, Jaime Moreno, Raul Diaz-Arce, later Roy Lassiter, Eddie Pope developing into one of the best American defenders of all time. You get to some of the kind of second-tier players on those teams. Richie Williams was one of the best holding midfielders in MLS history. Jeff Agus has won as many MLS Cups as anybody in the league's history after going to San Jose from DC. Very underrated American defender in Jeff Agus. Carlos Llamosa got his start there. Guys like John Mason or Mario Gori. I mean, those early DC teams are as good as you've ever seen in this league's history. The 98 team that actually ended up not winning MLS Cup might be the best team in MLS history. They won the Copa Interamericana. They won the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They were about as good as it gets in this league's history. And because they didn't win MLS Cup and because it was the early days of the league, they get forgotten about a little bit. I'm pulling up their stats right now because Marco Echeverri was the MLS MVP. Let's see what we got here. So Roy Lassiter scored 18 goals. Jaime Moreno had 16 and 8 assists. Marco Echeverri, 10 goals, 13 assists. So 3 double-digit scorers. John Harkes started 29 matches. Tony Sane was in that team as well, emerging into one of the best right backs that the United States has ever seen. Ben Olsen was a young player in that team. He was 20 years old. Started 24 matches, starting his career. You had players like A.J. Wood, Roy Wegerle. Wegerle was coming off the bench. You had Brian Kamler, Scott Garlick. Is a really good team that got beat in the final by Chicago at the Rose Bowl, but went on to beat Vasco da Gama in international play after winning CONCACAF. It's as good of a team as you're going to find. I mean, to have... Let's see. Lassiter was a U.S. national team level player at that time. Moreno and Echeverri are two of the greatest ever players from Bolivia. Harkes was a national team player up until right before the 98 World Cup. Sane was a national team player. Olsen was becoming a national team player. Richie Williams was a borderline national team player. Jeff Agus was a national team player. Eddie Pope was a national team player. Carlos Llamosa was getting national team appearances. You had Jeff Onger from Canada, who was a national team player. you had so many top players with that team. That's one of the best teams of all time. And to see those early teams and to see a DC team that had some Latin flair, had just immense quality, it was a fun team to follow and watch. And that was who I followed the most before Atlanta.
For me, being 427 years old, I mean, I go back to the North American Soccer League, but
that's not the question, John.
I know, but I had a but in there.
But it has nothing to do with the question, John.
I know, but for me, it was the LA Galaxy because of, that was where my dad and that half of the family existed. And so when I would go and spend summers with my dad in the early days of the league, there would be the time where we would, parachute into the Rose Bowl and see the Galaxy there. So that was what it was for me, was the early days of the LA Galaxy, carrying over from my time with the LA Aztecs and the California Surf.
The first
so that was
year
my
of
initial
the
attraction.
Galaxy, it took the Galaxy a while to win MLS Cup. They were the bridesmaid for quite a while. 96, they came up short in the final. 99, they came up short in the final. That 96 team was a really good one as well. Kobe Jones, obviously, we know about what he's done in the game in this country. Eduardo Hurtado from Ecuador scored 21 goals in the first year of the league. But the player that, if you don't know him, it's time to go to YouTube and learn a little bit this morning. Mauricio Cienfuegos.
Yes.
The diminutive Salvadoran number 10. An amazing player. One of the greatest ever players from El Salvador. So much fun to watch. A legend in Los Angeles with the Galaxy. The people who were there at the beginning know all about Cienfuegos and everything he brought to the table. But that first year of the Galaxy, your main starters. So on the back line, Robin Fraser, who's a manager in the league now. Dan Kalichman, really underrated center back. Mark Simioli and Greg Vanney, 21-year-old Greg Vanney, manager in the league right now. Midfield, you had Cienfuegos, you had Kobe Jones, you had Chris Armas, manager in the league now, 23, young player breaking in. Up top, you had Hurtado. Jones played up top in some formations. Harut Karapetian, Armenian forward, he scored 6 goals. Jorge Salcedo played in the back. Really good squad. Jorge Campos in goal, sometimes playing on the field. You had a player who played 5 matches, 96 minutes, but was maybe one of the most famous players in the team in Andrew Shue, who was starring on Melrose Place at the time. Andrew is a good soccer player. He just was probably a better actor, but he was a good soccer player. Played professionally in Africa, actually, before he got on Melrose Place, and was always wearing soccer gear on Melrose Place before the league started, and then had an opportunity to go play. And guys who played with him talked about how great of a teammate he was, because he didn't come in and act like a Hollywood guy. He just wanted to play, wanted to be part of the team. I think injuries ended up slowing him down the next year. But yeah, let's see. Who else did you have? You had Kurt Analfo on this team, another future manager in the league. He played 13 matches. A young player who went on to be one of the best goal scorers in the league's history, only played 3 times in 96, Ante Razov. So I think the thing about the beginning of the league, I think a lot of people look at it as like, oh, the MLS is so much better now. It was so bad before. No, it's a different timeline. At the very beginning, the league was incredible. Some of the talent was incredible on these teams. You only had 10. So you'd have like talent tightly packed on these 10 teams. It was after that first wave of players moved on and the league was not doing all that well. That's when the quality dipped. These early teams were incredibly good and hold up when you start comparing players and levels to modern times. It does. It was the 99, 2000, 2001 to maybe 2008, 2009, where, all right, there you had a dip in quality. So it started high, went down, and then now continues to rise. But the early days of the league, some good players and good teams in there.
Yeah, see, you mentioned, and all of that stuff just comes flooding back outside of Jorge Campos, for me that was the easy one to remember, but Cienfuegos, Carpetian, those were the first two. When you're running through that list on the roster, I'm like, yes, and Mauricio Cienfuegos. I just like saying Mauricio Cienfuegos in the early days of the Galaxy.
Incredible player. Absolutely incredible player.
Yeah, those two were the ones that I was drawn to, were Carpetian and Cienfuegos. Susan Laurie, overnight, posted a photo of something that has frightened me.
Okay.
And I'm sure that Gwen is shaking it off as well. The picture of pastel candy corn.
That's gross. That's just gross.
Exists. And it was in her shopping cart, apparently.
You sure it didn't change colors? Like it wasn't some of your old candy corn that would be used in Easter baskets 6 months after Halloween? And
that's a Susan Laurie question, sir. Brock's pastel candy corn, and it has like a soft green. This is straight. It says great for baking and decorating.
Bruh.
Basically, yeah. And this is candy corn straight out of a Miami Vice episode.
That's awful. Susan, I'm horribly disgusted at this point. I'm going to have nightmares.
Yeah, and Nick just chimed in and said, "Proof it exists," in all caps.
Good.
Yeah, that's what you need as a drop. Nick Brawley with an Atlanta United question this morning. He says, how do you see Atlanta United dealing with the Castro loan? Extending it would make sense, but I'm not sure on the complications that could cause. I figure it makes it easier that we have the option to buy at least.
Yeah, without knowing the terms, it's impossible. It's bad timing, obviously, because you'd like to get a chance to see him, and you might not. You might have only had the time at the Estadio Azteca before the decision has to be made. I would think that you would extend it. And it just depends. I don't even remember how it was reported off the top of my head. I don't know what the options are at the end, if you can just extend it for the rest of the year or if you have to make the buy decision at the end of the 6 months. If you have to make the buy decision, it's going to be very difficult. A lot of it's going to depend on how much training time you get between now and then, and what the price tag is, obviously. That's going to be the most important thing. If you can extend the loan and then make a decision at the end of the MLS season, that's probably more of what you'd be looking to do. I think that would kind of be a no-brainer, and unless it becomes a salary cap issue.
Nathan Pugh, off of the recommendations of viewing for documentaries and such yesterday when we had our top fives that were listed, he says he just watched White, Blue, and White. Thanks for the great doc recommendation.
Yeah, that was a great one, and it was one that kind of flew under the radar a little bit. I was glad I found it, because I didn't see it when it first came out. I missed it. I found it might have been right when ESPN Plus launched, and they put everything up for streaming that I found it and watched it. It was really good. It's just that's an interesting time in general, because you can lump so many different things into that general conversation about the Falklands conflict and soccer and the overlap, because Argentina's team in '82, which was a defending World Cup champion, when they left, and players have talked about it, Maradona talked about it in multiple books that have been written by him. When they left Argentina to go to Spain for the '82 World Cup, they thought, because of the way that the conflict was being reported in Argentina, that they were winning. They thought everything was fine and great, and it was demoralizing when they read papers in their native language, in Spanish, in Spain, reporting what was really happening. It demoralized the team going into that World Cup, and it showed the way they played. They were not at the level that they should have been at. then you take it all the way to 86 and the Argentina-England match that has all kinds of different implications across the board that made it more complicated because this was years after the conflict, but it was the first time they met in that kind of a match. And that's one reason why that Diego Maradona really didn't have a problem punching a ball into the back of the net and taking joy from stealing something from the English. I mean, he's mentioned it. There was a whole lot of things going on. The situation that Osvaldo Ardiles and Ricky Villa faced at Tottenham was incredibly complicated. It was different for each of them. Ardiles left and Ricky Villa stayed. And both of them had some huge, just complications with it. But they've both said that the club really went out of their way to try to make it as comfortable as they could. Kind of an unbelievable situation when you look at it now of, two countries who were at war in Argentina and England who had Argentine players playing in England at the time. It's just crazy. I mean, I couldn't even imagine being in that kind of a situation and having to try to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, no, in watching White, Blue, and White, I mean, I remember the news aspect of it more than anything. I was following it from the daily news perspective and not from the sports perspective. And what that particular documentary did is it gave me the sports view from that perspective, and I thought that it was tremendously told. And so I would put that one down as definitely one to find a way to watch if you can.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll get back into the Twitter timeline, whatever you guys want to get into on a Tuesday Thoughts edition of Soccer Down here. We'll get into it in hour number 2 right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
John has blown my mind again as we start hour number 2. This is probably... there's no probably. This is absolutely more ridiculous than
Seriously?
John Forth. Yes, it's more ridiculous than John Nelson for 3 years saying that Inter Miami would not happen, even saying it last season, even saying it after last season completed. This is 10 times worse. John is trying to convince me that he ain't believing nothing about Tom Brady leaving the Patriots, even though Tom Brady said he's leaving the Patriots.
A,
Go
always.
ahead and try
B,
to explain
B.
your logic to the people, because my head's exploded.
A, always. B, B. C, closing. Always be closing. Get them to sign on the line, which is dotted. Straight out of Glengarry Glen Ross. Until he signs a contract and has a press conference with another team. This is the same guy who had a black and white Instagram photo that set the football world on fire, that turned into a Hulu ad.
It was a tease for a commercial. That's a little different than saying my football journey is going to be elsewhere. That's about as clear as it gets.
Oh, and that's not a negotiating tactic?
Goodness. You question everything and drive yourself and everybody else crazy.
I drive everybody else crazy. I don't drive myself crazy. I just sit there and No, I have no straitjackets here in office.
Holy cow!
I think you need one to try to say, oh yeah, Tom Brady's going to play for the Patriots next year.
I don't need a straitjacket for that. Until he signs a contract for what? Tampa? Which is not going to happen.
He said he's leaving. He's not going back. He's not going to play for the Patriots.
Tampa Bay.
I don't care where he plays.
All right, so let's examine this briefly. With the National Football League probably not starting training camps.
Hold on. No, I'm gonna take this a different way to examine something. How many times have you seen a player in any sport say, "My journey is leading me elsewhere. I'm not coming back." Then go back. Give me an example, one, of a time that's happened.
Oh, players haven't used this as a negotiating ploy?
No. Give me an example of
You're having
a
me
player
think.
who said, I am not coming back. I'm leaving. Watch the taillights as I pull out of town. And then come back. Not go anywhere else first.
I'll pose it to the floor just as well. Give me a second, but I'll come up with somebody who sat there and said nope and then came back.
And you're going to use one example out of billions and billions of athletes who have played in places all over the world to try to justify this ridiculous position. I don't even know why you're arguing it. He said he's leaving. Let him go. He's going to go somewhere. He doesn't go to Tampa. Big deal. He'll go to the Raiders. He'll go to L.A. He'll go somewhere.
Well, he won't go to the Raiders because they signed Marcus Mariota to hang out with Derek Carr.
He'll go somewhere. I don't really care where he goes, but he's not going back to New England.
Until it happens, I ain't buying it.
Why do you not buy anything? It makes no sense.
Because what? I guess you want to call me a natural skeptic? I don't know.
This is beyond that, though. This is ludicrous. Like, it's the same thing that you did with Miami, where it's like, no, it's not going to happen. Well, no, they've signed players now. Oh, it's not going to happen. Well, they have a manager now. No, it's not going to happen. They're not going to play. Well, they're building something. Like there's actually a field being put in. There are stands being put up. No, they're not going to exist. Like, why? I understand being skeptical of things, but you take it to an extreme that drives me crazy.
So my extreme skepticism in general drives you crazy.
When there are things that make it very obvious that something is going to happen and you argue against them just because?
No.
Yes.
Hey.
So Miami was going to sign players and then just,
It took me until actually having Lockhart Stadium turn into Heron Field or whatever they're going to call it. And then that game out in Los Angeles. All right. Hey.
It took them actually playing a game for you to believe that it was going to happen?
Assembling a roster and all that stuff.
No, I need to know exactly where it changed for you because you kept trying to fight it after that.
Of course I was. They hadn't played a home match yet.
Good grief. What was the mark where you thought they were actually
if the MLS
exist?
if the MLS season were to have gone null and void, I'd still have a
No, you'd be incorrect because they exist, because they have players, they have a roster. They exist. You've said they wouldn't exist.
True.
Where did that change? What did it take for you to believe that they actually
that first match being rolled out with Pizarro and everybody in Los Angeles?
So you thought the day before that they might, poof into the thin air and disappear, and it was all a joke?
Until you stand there and you get that first whistle.
Good grief. You are insane sometimes, and you try to drive me insane because you know what you're doing. Gah!
You just made the list!
Again.
I just made the list?
Again.
I don't just made the list!
You've always been on the list at the top.
I was going to say.
Star by it.
I've got like multiple red stars. I should be at the top of the list instead of just making it again.
Definitely you are with this type of foolishness.
That's what I'm here for.
You can buy me a bag of stupid pastel candy corns when Tom Brady signs with somebody other than the New England Patriots.
Susan, you'll have to tell me where you purchased it, because I don't go readily chasing after things that would probably set my hand on fire if I were to pick it up. Pastel candy corn.
Why would it just set your hand on fire?
Just because it's so scary.
Okay. I don't get that at all.
It's just that notion of something like pastel candy corn. It just probably has some kind of adverse reaction to individuals when you actually touch it.
Ay, Dios mío. All right, what else
Susan,
are people
you'll have to tell us where you picked that up
and John
how plentiful that particular item was in said store. If you were the only person to get it, or if people were getting it to add to get ready for Halloween or Easter or whatever holiday. But yeah, it was very frightening to see.
John will get one of those sticks with a handle on the end that can pick something up that you don't have to touch it.
Yes, exactly. It's with the clasp at the end of it.
Yeah, that's
like
what you'll
you
use.
get the trigger, the trigger that you grab, and it's or like the thing at the old Showbiz Pizza place where you could take the grasping hook and grab it and then pull it up and you win a prize. You get one of those grasping hooks.
Yep.
Looks like as it stands, and this is as it stands according to Sky's graphic, Nations League June 2 through 6 of 2021, the Under-21 Championship June 9 through 26.
Nations League ain't happening. This is what was already scheduled. You're not going to have Nations League a week before Euro 2021. It ain't happening. Bye, Nations League.
And then as of right now, Club World Cup is still on the board, but anything's possible.
That ain't happening either. You're not going to have Euro 2021 plus a World Club Cup. No, it ain't happening.
And until Tom Brady signs a contract and has the press conference with another one of the 31 clubs, he's still heading back to New England.
I can't believe you are trying to equate a world governing body of soccer having a club world championship at the same time that two continents have a national team championship. Like, that's feasible, with a player saying, "Dog, I ain't coming back. Bye, Belichick. I don't like your stupid hoodies anyway." And then coming back with his tail between his legs.
It's not coming back It's not coming back with his tail between his legs.
No,
it's a negotiating
it would absolutely be coming back with your tail between your legs. When you said you're leaving, when you say, "Dude, I'm out. Bye," and then what? Nobody's going to sign him. Nobody's going to give him a boatload of money. Nobody's going to back up a truck.
Everybody will back up a truck, but it's not going to have any. It has to do with control and winning a championship. And how many teams will give Tom Brady the amount of control that he wants in running an offense or having input with an offense and being paid whatever he wants to be paid? Where can he make what he wants to make?
Anybody who has the cap room.
Duh. See Falcons, Atlanta for that success rate?
No, John. Let's not be stupid here. The Falcons have committed to Matt Ryan for a boatload of money. They're not going to give a boatload of money to another quarterback. There are teams that don't have a quarterback that would give a boatload of money because they have it, and they would do what Denver did with Peyton Manning and say, oh, what do you want to do? Who do you want to hire? Okay, here, do whatever you want. You would do that even faster for Tom Brady. He's not going to have to go back and say, I'm sorry, Bill Belichick. I really did like your cutoff hoodies and thought it was a cool look. I do like you. After they hated each other. And everybody's known that. He's gone. Stop fighting it. It's stupid.
Rich Ransom on Twitter this morning.
This is also stupid and not Rich. Rich is awesome. This whole conversation about the U.S. women's national team is stupid.
What's going on with the women's national team? Anything new?
No, what did Rich say first?
Oh, okay. What did Rich say? He says it might be old news now, but Reed Cordero from last week, his only, parenthesis, not so secret, close parenthesis, job was to get the World Cup 2026 hosting bid, then lead the USSF into the tournament. The USSF would worry about all the issues on field and off after the 2026 Cup.
Speculation. I don't know how the actual federation was being run. There were reportedly changes in how much the board was going to be involved going forward. But then you get a number of board members say that they did not know what this legal strategy was. The president said he didn't know what the freaking legal strategy was. So I don't know if the board members were going to know if the president didn't know. Could the president have been lying about that? Yeah, absolutely. There's also people who have said that he was a micromanager and didn't involve the board as much as he should have. I don't know. And none of us will know unless we were part of the board. That's what's hard about it. You know, in general, from my experience on a nonprofit organizational side, not on the board side, but dealing with the board doesn't know everything that happens internally. They can't. They have their own jobs. They have their own responsibilities. They do their own things. They're not there to run the day-to-day. So board members not knowing what a legal strategy was in detail, I can understand. They should know the basics, but were they being informed of that? Because that would be the president's role. That would be a chairman's role. Those kinds of things, they should know that. We don't know where the breakdown was. So it's incredibly hard to speculate to say that, well, the board should have done this, that Cordero did this or didn't do. We don't know. I feel like, and this is my feeling, so this is completely my opinion, that Cordero's backtracking and initial statement when this became public, then combined with stepping down, that he screwed up. And he didn't have a way out of it because he screwed up. He couldn't blame the board. He couldn't blame somebody else. So he fell on the sword. I don't know. Was the getting 2026 a huge part of his initial job? Absolutely. But to say that he wasn't doing anything else, I don't think that's the case. I don't know, but that wouldn't really make a lot of sense from a structural standpoint because, I mean, once you get it, he didn't really have a lot to do initially, and he wasn't doing a lot because they were still figuring out who was going to run the organizing committee. Dan Flynn looks like is going to be that person. They hadn't made progress in terms of creating criteria for the hosting cities and identifying the hosting cities. So if his whole job was the World Cup, what was he doing after he got it? So I'm not 100% buying it. I do think the World Cup was the number one thing on his agenda when he started. I think that's pretty well understood. Cindy Parlow-Cone has issued a statement. Grant Wall posted it last night. We'll hit the highlights of it. Cindy Parlow-Cone is the new U.S. Soccer president and said, last week's legal filing was an error. It resulted from a fundamental breakdown in our internal process that led to offensive assertions made by the Federation that do not represent our core values. We are taking a number of steps to address the issue. First, today's brief, which was released yesterday, the final filing in a request for summary judgment excludes the offensive language it contained. That language neither represents my position nor the view of the Federation. Second, we are transitioning to Latham & Watkins law firm as our lead counsel moving forward. So they have gotten rid of the law firm that was in charge of this situation. Cindy Parlow-Cohn said, as you'll see from the brief, it is signed by the Latham law firm and represents the work they have done over the last week. She also said, finally, we are going to do a comprehensive review of our internal process to better understand how this breakdown occurred and how it can be avoided in the future. I expect that review to be completed shortly. In terms of the long-term vision here, as I've said since Cordero stepped down, Cindy Parlow-Cohn needs to get in a room with the leaders of the national team, the women's national team, who are going to direct their players' association to do what they are told. Cindy Parlow-Cohn would direct the now Latham & Watkins law firm that is directing their legal side of this, and she would be directing the U.S. Soccer Board into actions. Get everybody else out of it. Get Cindy Parlow-Cohn and whoever the players are that need to be involved, sit down and figure this out. And I think ultimately it comes down to a very simple thing of the U.S. men's national team and the U.S. women's national team should be paid the same amount of money. This is excluding bonuses. Bonuses are a whole different conversation, and it looks like they're becoming a more complicated part of the conversation. We'll get there in a minute. They should be paid the same amount. Can they be paid that amount in different ways? Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably going to be something that would be at least a short-term idea, because it's very easy to see that if you compare MLS, we will exclude international leagues right now. We will exclude American national team players who are playing in those leagues right now. If you compare MLS salaries to NWSL salaries, there's a big difference. Because if you compare MLS revenues to NWSL revenues, there's a very big difference. The women need more support from the Federation to be the best national team in the world. And that's the Federation's goal. So if that means they need some salary and whatever amounts they can make on top of that to be equal, and it's not equal player by player. I think that's something that needs to be left to the side for right now. The total spend needs to be the same. That's the issue here. The total spend between the men's national team for all of the categories like salary, like camp fees, like per diems, like percentages of tickets, and maybe that changes the numbers just a little bit, but those percentages should be the same. The women draw more people to games and more tickets are sold, they should get more money, flat out. You've got to figure out a way to value the women's TV deal in the same deal that is including the men's TV deal. The Federation's got to figure this out. The amounts should be the same in the flat amounts. Percentages can change. Now, the bonus side of it, that's a whole different conversation, because the men's FIFA money that comes in from the World Cup is far different than the women. And I do not think it's fair, and I think this is something that has come up. I have not seen it validated just yet, but the women winning the Women's World Cup make less money from FIFA. So this is being passed through by FIFA to the Federation. The women would make less money in bonus for winning the World Cup than the men would. The women are far more likely to win it as well, but they would win. They would make more. I think it's $5 million versus like $35 million, roughly. I don't know if it is fair or justifiable to say that the women should be paid the same amount as the men would if they won the World Cup, because that money is coming from the outside and it's a different amount of money. Should it be the same percentage of the money that comes in? 100%. Absolutely. But can it be the same amount when you're talking about 35 million versus 5 or whatever the difference ends up being? I don't know if that's fair and equitable, and I don't know if that would hold up in a court, because it feels like the percentages should be the same. But I don't know if you can say that then the U.S. Soccer Federation should go find $30 million that they're not getting in from the same place for the women winning versus the men. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's a complicated one. I think that's outside the federation side.
I think is what needs to be looked at.
Yeah, but I think the overall spend outside of the percentage-based stuff, the overall spend should be the same. Now, the percentages, and that would be, I think, an equitable way to do it if, let's say, because I know the tickets that were sold, the players get a percentage of the gate. If they get a percentage of the TV deals, a percentage of sponsorships, it's got to be the same percentages. And if one team is more valued than the other, well, then they're going to make more money. But the percentage has to be the same. The others that are flat amounts in terms of the overall spend, and this is for me where you lump in salary, benefit, per diem, appearance money, win money. Yeah, win money should be the same. The flat out amounts that are handed out and you lump it all together should be the same. You can divide it up differently if you so choose, because then you get into that conversation of salary versus no salary. Because that's a real conversation when it comes to the women versus the men. And it's something that has been completely lost in all of this conversation with people, taking their sides and drawing lines in the sand and not listening. The women get paid a salary, the men don't. That's very different. So if that means the women are getting a guaranteed amount and they're getting less per camp, okay, that makes sense. The men are making more per camp because they're not getting any salary. Okay, I get it. But it has to be overall spend in guaranteed money that is going to go out to the teams. Has to be the same. It has to be the same. There's no reason for that to be different. The percentages in shares of other revenues that come in, they have to be the same. And then it's down to if the team is more marketable, well, they make more money. If the team is more successful, then they make more money. But it's got to be percentages of other revenues, and then flat amounts have to be the same. I don't think it's that complicated. And I think everybody's making it more complicated than it needs to be.
I also think that folks, when they're looking at the issue, it's deeper and it's more detail. It's not just yes, no. There are shades and percentages and comparisons that have to be made. It's not as cut and dried, I think, as people are laying it out to be when you're looking at what the Soccer Federation wants versus what the players want. I think that a lot of folks look at labor negotiations and they sit there and they say, well, I think they're right, I think they're wrong, I think this instead of this, when this one has shades to it. And I think that proportionality is key here, is that look at the numbers and there is an iniquity there. But if you were to take it in percentages, then apply that as a part of the math. And that's what I think a lot of this comes down to, is just looking at the comparisons and percentages and come up with something that would work for both sides.
It's hard. And the women do have another element that make this more complicated, and that's the Federation's support of the NWSL. That needs to be guaranteed. And I would like to think that, especially now, Cindy Parlow-Cone, who played in the original WUSA, would not use the NWSL support as a bargaining chip. I worried that it would have been used before. I worried that part of the negotiation would have been, okay, well, you want this amount. Yeah, okay, we'll do that, but we're going to have to take it out of what we give to the NWSL, so the NWSL is going to have to sink or swim. I don't think that's going to be the case now. I hope it's not. It shouldn't be. But, yeah, the NWSL needs support from the Federation. MLS does not. And no, don't try to come at me with tinfoil hats and say, well, Soccer United marketing, blah, blah. That's different. The Federation has just given checks to the NWSL. And if you remember, the relationship between the two was I think, contractually over at the end of last season. I don't know what the resolution has been, actually. But if you go back to the last AGM of U.S. Soccer, NWSL came and requested more money than they had been given before for support, and that was denied. And I don't know if there's been a resolution to it at this stage. So there is a level of support. Soccer United marketing and that relationship has nothing to do with that for MLS. Right now, there is financial support that goes from U.S. Soccer to the NWSL, and that needs to continue and should not be any part of this discussion. It is a more complicated situation than just saying, okay, you're going to make the same amount. Now, if that's what it comes down to, and we've talked about this, if the Federation comes back and says, okay, we're going to sit down, because they have to negotiate a men's CBA as well. And that's why all of this is stupid. And I hope Cindy Parlow-Cone comes in with some common sense and says, all right, we got to negotiate with the men anyway. Here's what we're going to do. First, you have the conversation with the women to fix the relationship. And that should be an easy conversation for Cindy Parlow-Cone to have.
Yeah.
You get that done. Then you go and you sit with both and you say, we're going to negotiate a collective CBA, collective bargaining agreement between the two national teams. And it will be the same in terms of the amount. Because the men are not going to get any salary, and that's not even on the table. If the women choose to divide up their pot of money differently, okay. But what we're going to do first is we're going to figure out, this is the amount, this is what we're valuing the sponsorships and these TV rights deals at. You're going to get the same percentage of your part of it, but this is the amount we're going to give you. And you're going to go back and forth, negotiate that, get to the same amount, done. Then you can sit down with the women separately and say, this is what we're giving you. How do you want to divide it up? Do 20 players get a small salary? Do a larger pool get a larger salary? Do you want it to just go into appearance fees? Whatever. That's the next level conversation. But first, fix the relationship. Second, figure out the amount you're going to spend on both. Third, divide it up with each one. That's it. It honestly should be that simple.
See, they need to have you at the table.
No.
Or at least make the appearance at the beginning of the negotiation with both sides at that really long, skinny, rectangular table. You mention your 3 points. You put them on the board. And then you spin on your heel, walk out of the room, and close the door and lock it behind you.
No, Cindy Parlow-Cone's a very intelligent person who I think is going to get this done correctly. I have faith in that happening because she doesn't have the baggage of others who have been involved in these positions from a U.S. Soccer perspective. She's not looking at it from a traditional federation perspective. I think she's going to look at it in a realistic way because honestly, that's all it is. It's just common sense.
KFC started online play of FIFA 20 last night and was dealt a familiar matchup. Atlanta United Club America from the Bends. And KFC included match highlights, which was a 3-2 win for Atlanta United. Brooks Lennon with a brace. Jeff Lorenowitz with a goal for the Atlanta United victory over Club America.
Yeah, I've been playing FIFA 20 a little bit too, and playing in the 3-4-2-1 and trying to play it like Atlanta United would. It's actually been a lot of fun to play the game in that kind of manner and try to think like the way Atlanta United should play. So a lot of possession, a lot of combination play, trying to stretch the field out wide. It's been fun to think through it and play through it in a thoughtful way, not just in an arcade style. When I started it, you start the season and you get to pick a preseason tournament to play in, and I picked one because I wanted to play different teams than MLS teams. So I picked the one that was based in Mexico, and I played at the Estadio Azteca, which was kind of weird. Beat Morelia in the final of that little preseason tournament. But again, what makes me mad, and I wish EA, since everybody's wanting to play their game right now, and I wish they would come back and say, all right, we fixed it. Nashville and Miami exist, so John can shut up about Miami not existing, and you can actually play the game as Inter Miami.
See my boy Pizarro and my boy Lee Wynn play in the tournament.
Maybe that will change his position on Inter Miami being a real thing or not, even though they're in the standings and on the schedule. And maybe they'll fix that. I wish they would. They haven't, and I don't want to wait until September when the next FIFA game comes out to play the 2020 season. Now, I know they're doing this based off of the European leagues and that calendar, but I wish they would at least add the option to download the real MLS competition. Because right now, like, I'm playing it as the 2020 teams playing the 2019 schedule, which is kind of weird, but is what it is.
I'm sorry, I screwed up. Joseph scored the third goal, not Jeff.
In Kefsi's game.
In Kefsi's, yes.
Yes.
It took me a second. And Kefsi literally is DMing me at this moment. And I just remembered, it's like I had a flashback of what happened in Campiones Cup with Jeff. Now it was Joseph. So I was close. Same first letter, wrong dude.
UEFA has made their official statement about postponing Euro 2020 by 12 months. I'm assuming they might have went in and slapped the Norwegian representative who tweeted it a little early. Might have got the backhand. They have announced the postponement. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in the statement. All UEFA competitions and matches, including friendlies for clubs and national teams for both men and women, have been put on hold until further notice. The UEFA Euro 2020 playoff matches and international friendlies scheduled for the end of March will now be played in the international window at the start of June, subject to a review of the situation. I think that's going to get scrapped too. I think domestic leagues are going to need that window. A working group has been set up with the participation of leagues and club representatives to examine calendar solutions that would allow for the completion of the current season and any other consequence of the decisions made today. And I believe I saw in Tariq Panja as well that 2 working groups have been created. The one I just mentioned about the calendar. The other one is to consider financial consequences. That group has not been formed up yet. Will be decided by UEFA.
So the Norwegian FA got put on the list?
They should. I mean, they came out and dropped the news before it was public.
And speaking of which, when Sky Sports News initially put out their notification about postponing Euro 2020, Jason Davies, with a Soccer Over There note, finished their tweet for them by saying, to allow Kane and Rashford to get fit, and it gives Greenwood another year. This is a good move.
Also true.
So he says, I'm looking for positives here, searching, really digging deep.
Yeah.
Looking deeply for positives here. A couple of folks have commented on the Cabin Fever playlist idea that has come out.
Okay.
From NPR. And Chris,
it's a playlist. I think everybody has done a playlist of some sort over the last few days. I don't think NPR is that original here.
But yeah, mine's basically been YouTube on repeat. But Katie Weaver says she loves a good playlist, especially one that leads off with Stevie Wonder. Though truthfully, I found it a challenge to pick music to listen to in the age of coronavirus.
Yeah, I'm making myself go through it. I am forcing myself to pick stuff. I did a St. Patrick's Day themed playlist this morning on my Twitter, and I'm trying to do those every morning because I don't have the prep work to do for the show like I normally do. So I got to do something so I don't lose my mind, and that's what I'm trying to do. So Tuesday morning playlist, I'll read it out to you this time around. So it started with the Pogues, Dirty Old Town. Then it went to a cover of Whiskey in the Jar from Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, which was a pretty cool cover that I found. I liked that one. I was very pleasantly surprised. Then, I mean, it's bands from Ireland. You have to have U2 on it. Picked a Walk On from Slane Castle. Pretty cool live performance that was on YouTube. Then a cover of U2 from The Killers, Ultraviolet, Light My Way, which is a great song from Achtung Baby, and one that gets kind of underrated, and the Killers do a good cover of that. I went back to Ireland for the Cranberries, Dreams, live from Woodstock 94, which is a weird place to see the Cranberries play. I loved Dolores' voice so much, and that was a pretty cool performance of it. I had to go with a pop song, kind of recent hit, Galway Girl, Ed Sheeran. Then, of course, if you've been to a bar on St. Patrick's Day, you have heard Drunken Lullabies by Flogging Molly. You have heard Dropkick Murphys on repeat. I went with Fields of Athenry, a live performance of that. I pulled one out that if anybody's actually heard of the band Black 47, cool New York band with heavy Irish roots, a song that was... I saw it on... I think it might have been 120 Minutes on MTV when I was in high school. It might have been Alternative Nation. I don't remember. They were doing a bunch of different shows at the time. I know 120 Minutes played it, which was the Sunday night alternative rock show. Funky Kaylee is the song. Black 47 was the band. I loved that song. I loved their EP that came out at that time. I think they still do stuff today. And then I finished it with a cover that I would have never expected would have been as good as it was. Danny Boy, which we all know, the standard. Johnny Cash doing it. It was really good. Wow. Yeah,
was
really,
that in
really
is that in the Rick Rubin produced albums?
Yeah, it was from that time period. It was really, really good. I would have, if I could have found it, you'll have to watch the movie for it, the ridiculous over-the-top version of Danny Boy by Brian Setzer from The Great White Hype, which if you're looking for random movies to watch right now, The Great White Hype is such an underrated movie, mocking the professional boxing scene.
Yeah.
It's an amazing
I've
flick.
Seen that one.
Yeah, it's a great flick. I love it, and it's so dead on with so many aspects of it. But the performance of Danny Boy from that is just absurd from Brian Setzer as the Great White Hype was coming to the ring. Irish Tommy Conklin, who wasn't Irish, he was just white.
Joe Johnstone this morning for the hashtag digital learning. He says he should have had his students listen to the show as part of the lesson for today.
You would have had to turn it off when John started talking nonsense about Tom Brady, Joe.
Along those lines, Michael Head says, Jason, gosh, calm down over Brady. My goodness, let John believe what he wishes. Hashtag high blood pressure. Hashtag not footy related.
No, I want John to stop being stupid with these things and just actually move on sometimes.
Percy Herrera wishes that I would meet Field Yates from the 4-letter. He says, former New England scout, very tapped into the Pats. Brady is gone.
Yeah, he's gone. There's no question about it.
Kurt McGirt says, and this is an excellent point. He says, let's not forget, Giselle pulls in the real money in the Bunch and Brady household. If they leave, she's picking the location.
That's a good point. That's a definite point. So there will probably be Son involved in this and not going to be hanging out in Foxborough anymore, that's for sure.
So let's see. I don't even think
the Barstool guys or what's the big sports talk station in Boston?
98.5 5, the Sports Hub.
Yeah, I don't think the Sports Hub is arguing that Brady's going to come back. I think you're out on an island on this one.
Yeah. I'll probably tune into 98.5. Screaming Scott Zolak. I'd love to hear what he's saying today.
He's probably not making the argument you are.
Tom Brady, could you believe this? Could you believe all these years Tom Brady's turning his back on the Patriots? Can't wait to hear that stuff.
It is going to be funny. Are there going to be jerseys burned?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. If in fact he does sign with another team.
Stop. Like, seriously, stop. You're better than that. Stop.
God, Scott Zolak. Trying to do a Scott Zolak impression. Scott Zolak just talks like he chewed glass. And to try to do a screaming Scott Zolak impression, that hurts.
That sounds painful.
It is. And listening to Scott it is an adventure. Shiva says, nothing beats the conversations between you and I over football. Not soccer, but football.
One day, John will come around.
Nah.
I hope at some point.
Chris Hutchison says, no more candy corn.
Better than you, and you know it.
I just want to drop MJF drops every time you say something like that.
Don't trust wrestlers that wear scarves, people. MJF, flipping off 5-year-olds at signings.
He's a heel. He's got to be a heel.
Of course he's a heel. Oh, he's completely and totally embraced it. But I'm waiting for the moment that Wardlow turns on him, because basically all Wardlow is his errand boy. And that's MJF calling right now, as a matter of fact.
He's calling you to say it.
Yeah, well, MJF, I'm waiting for Wardlow to turn on him, because all he does is his errands. And Wardlow is slightly thicker than doing errands for MJF. I'm waiting for the time when he hits him in the back of the head and turns on him.
But MJF is better than you, and he's also smarter than you, so he'll have a new lackey ready to go and take Wardlow out. You know what's going to happen.
Or, that second one, Wardlow gets a valet, and then you get the whole Jimmy Garvin Precious Sunshine angle all over again.
And you're going to have to do that on Wrestling Down Here and go back to 1987?
Sounds about right. Yep, Wrestling Down Here on Twitter.
Yeah, everybody was just like, what is John talking about? He has completely lost it, even more so than the Brady take.
Never had it. Patrick Sullivan this morning says, if the, quote, let no good crisis go to waste, end quote, maxim holds weight among officials of Europe's richest clubs, which I'm sure it does, then I expect them to try and use this crisis as a major justification to establish their coveted European Super League.
I don't know. I mean, it could. It's certain clubs that are doing that. It's not UEFA doesn't want that at all, because they're not going to make money from it. So you got to be clear. It's specifically Real Madrid, Juventus. There's a few others that have been involved in the conversations, but it's those two that have been driving it. Well, you hate to say that it's going to make more sense now than it did before, but I think it does, because the domestic leagues are going to get hit by this.
Yep. They're
going to get hit hard by this, and they're going to be in a completely different position than they were before. So for the top clubs, it's going to be a time that if they want to push for it, they're going to push for it. UEFA's going to fight it. UEFA's fought it the whole way because they want to maintain control. This would be outside of that. I don't think it happens. I just don't think the new reality is going to lend itself to it. But could there be a renewed push? Yeah, absolutely could be. I do think that UEFA, FIFA, all the different confederations, all the different FAs and leagues around the world, this is an opportunity to look at why you do certain things. Why are you on the calendar that you are? I mean, American soccer is on the calendar that it's on. Don't think that it's this long studied thing that this is why they did it. It's just because it's what they've always done. When the professional league started in 1967, this is the calendar they ran. There's reasons why, and those reasons are valid. I mean, at that time, you were sharing a lot of stadiums with NFL teams, and you weren't going to get much access to them in the fall. You do have weather concerns. Mostly, the league started with teams, whether they were baseball or football teams, who had stadiums, or they were started by people who owned stadiums, which a lot of times were owned by these teams. And they were looking for tenants, and they were looking for events, and they were trying to fill the stadium up. That's why the Atlanta Chiefs started. The Atlanta Chiefs started not because there was a huge groundswell of soccer support in Atlanta in 1966. There was zero. Okay, maybe not zero. I think there were 5 high schools that were playing the game. There was no organized youth league. And, yeah, so slightly above zero. But it wasn't New York. It wasn't Chicago. It wasn't St. Louis. You didn't have a large ethnic population that was playing the game. It was nothing. The Atlanta Chiefs started because Atlanta Stadium was built for the Braves, the Falcons, and you had dates that you needed to fill. Period. And soccer was looked at as something that you could fill those dates with. And when the two leagues, because, again, U.S. Soccer, even back in 1966, was ridiculously bad at organizing things, because they couldn't get it organized, you had 2 different leagues that started. You actually had 3 groups that wanted to start it. 2 of them merged after they didn't get sanctioning. It's a long, long story. But you had so many different Major League Baseball and NFL owners that controlled stadium dates that started soccer teams because they wanted dates during the summer. They wanted additional dates beyond baseball. And the NFL teams, if they owned a stadium, they ran a stadium, they weren't worried about baseball. So they wanted something in the summer because there wasn't anything. That's why the calendar is what it is. Could it be better to do it differently? Maybe. I don't know. Now's a really good time to be examining these things, because now is when you can plan to relaunch in whatever way you want. And it is an opportunity. It 100% is an opportunity. If it would be better to relaunch, and also better in the long term to do a August to May league, fine. The NBA has talked about changing their calendar and starting around Christmas now. That's been something that's been a conversation for a long time, and ending later. Maybe that works. It gets you out of some different parts of the calendar. Maybe that's the way they want to go. Baseball is going to be really complicated, because baseball kind of is what it is. I don't know really how much room you have to work around the calendar to do different things.
Yeah, this year they're looking to push back 8 weeks to get the schedule
how much
started.
Later can you push the end back? That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like, they really don't have that room. You can play basketball at any time you want. You can play soccer in more weather complicated situations than you can baseball. So I don't know. But now is the time that all these leagues, all these competitions, all these governing bodies can look at why you do certain things and examine if that's the way it should continue. And if it is, okay, then fine. You have to get through this time and complete seasons and then continue on the same pathway. If you want to reimagine it, now's the time.
A couple of other thoughts get us caught up on Twitter this morning. Chris Hutchison, for his hashtag Tuesday thoughts, and also using the hashtag St. Patrick's Day, says he's hearing a disturbing rumor that today is only Tuesday.
Yeah, I don't really know days anymore at this point. I have to look to double check. It's just how it's going to be for a while, y'all. I don't know what to tell you. It's going to be strange. I mean, the more that I read and hear folks talk about it, like, you have to try to maintain normalcy as best you can and keep on a schedule as best you can. It's really easy to do what we've all done during, like a ice storm or, getting a snowstorm, and, you don't really follow a normal schedule, and you eat, lunch at 3 p.m, and you have a beer at noon, and who knows? I mean, all these things change because right now, look, a lot of people are working from home, but Well, when you're a soccer commentator, there's no games to call. Not really a lot of work to do at home. So I'm hoping once I kind of get past the initial stage of this to dig back into research. I have some ideas, like I was just talking about those initial leagues that launched. I want to start telling those stories. We've had some projects that I've been working on with some different folks that it's going to get delayed a little bit now because we're not going to have access to do certain things we've been working on, like library research and things, setting up interviews. But there's still stories to be told. And, we're going to be adding some different podcasts that are going to drop on your app and drop in your podcatchers about these kinds of things. So if you have like soccer history kind of questions and you want us to dig into it, well, it looks like we're going to have some time to do some research. So please let us know. Please let us know stuff like that. Another thing that we've talked about doing to keep things interesting, and maybe we try to do it on like weekends where there'd be matches, doing a watch along and using our Twitch channel to do something with that. There's a lot of games that are available on YouTube. We pick a game, we sync it up, we start and kind of almost do it like a director's commentary type of thing, like you watch a movie and people are talking through it as you go. We're working on some logistics with that. I know Nick would probably vote for a couple Italian national team games. The 82 World Cup match with Brazil is one that's on my list to do because it's just an amazing match, period. And Nick would be very happy about Paolo Rossi's hat trick. There's plenty of games that are available. There's some MLS games. There's some Atlanta United games that are available in full that are on YouTube, easily accessible to everybody, and we can do a watch along and do it like a commentary, not, commentary play-by-play color because that's already on there, but more like a director's commentary and talk through it and hang out. So stay tuned. We're going to be adding stuff to try to keep things as normal as we can do them in the meantime. And look, it's going to be a while. And we're all going to come out of this on the other side, and we're all going to come out of it in a good place, as best a place as we can find. But it is an opportunity, just like we were talking about with the leagues. It's an opportunity to kind of reimagine what we want things to be like and take advantage of that. I know the initial shock of things right now is a lot, and it's tough to get through, and it's hard for everybody, but do take advantage of this time to kind of reimagine how you want to be going forward, because we're all going to have that opportunity because things will be different.
And something today that is not different is the same thing that has happened on this particular day of the year a couple of times. A lot of folks, and thanks to everybody who has pitched in with this part of the conversation and wishing Kelly Francis, not a Kelly Francis, but the Kelly Francis, congratulations on yet another loop around the sun. Happy birthday to Kelly.
Yeah, the Dropkick Murphys are streaming their concert from Boston tonight with, I guess, nobody in attendance, specifically for Kelly Francis. That's what I was told.
Nice.
Anyway, so yes, you can watch that. Let me make sure I get the right places to watch it. Full streaming info, dropkickmurphys.com. So it's 7 o'clock Eastern time. If you're listening to us out west, it's 4 o'clock San Francisco time. So they've done their St. Patrick's Day concert, for I don't know how long. I don't know what number concert this is for them, but they're still doing it. It's just going to be streamed. And you're starting to see a lot of bands do this. A lot of performances are, streamed for the public right now, which is, again, pretty cool. It's a pretty cool way of doing things. So I was told that the Dropkick Murphys are going to sing Happy Birthday to Kelly. I don't know if that's 100% true. It's the rumor that I saw, and, you can believe anything you see on the internet. So,
yes. It's like Tom Brady leaving New England.
He said he was leaving, John. Like, he literally said it. I can trust him. You're not asking for the source on the guy saying it himself.
Until he has that press conference.
When you say something that is a horrible food take, I believe it because you said it.
So you believe my horrible food takes?
No, I believe you have them. I don't believe them because I know that you're full of nonsense with this. Like not knowing that you can make mayonnaise and crazy things that you say from time to time. No, I believe that they're crazy. And I believe that you believe them. So I believe that Tom Brady is leaving because he said he is.
Ergo, the transitive property.
Yes.
Oh, it was Taco Mac last night. For those that were listening on Soccer Over There, when the boss and I have determined that we are going to invest locally. And if there's an opportunity that we can get food from a local restaurant here close to Office HD, have it brought to the house, we are going to do so to continue to invest in the local economy. Last night it was Taco Mac.
Taco Mac's not bad. Not bad at all.
And once again, if anybody has a local business that they know of that is doing things continually for their local footprint, like we saw with Pizzeria Zuri when they posted on their Twitter their specials and things like that. So if anybody knows, if anyone in the SDH footprint is doing anything as a part of being a local business, go ahead and put that up, because we're all about spreading the love in a situation like this. And so, yeah, if you know anybody, know a business doing something cool, go ahead and post it and we'll retweet it.
The new MLS team in Charlotte continues to add to their front office. Former Everton director of football Steve Walsh has been appointed the new special advisor of Charlotte and MLS. We'll see what kind of timeline's obviously going to look different, but we'll see what things look like in terms of them announcing, name and logos and colors and such. But Walsh was shown the door at Goodison Park in May 2018. His time at Everton did not go well. He joined Everton from Leicester in 2016. He was deemed as, according to the Liverpool Echo, the brains behind their spectacular Premier League triumph back in the 2015-16 season. His recruitment of talent proved vital in the Fox's success. Didn't work as well at Everton.
No.
Happens sometimes. But now he is a special advisor with Charlotte.
And what they also added Tiffany Blackman the other day as one of their host for multi-platform material. So she leaves her career with the ESPN, and now she's going to do it for a Charlotte MLS. Gives her a chance to go home.
They're going big. I mean, these are big additions. These are not cheap. These are not, people coming straight out of college. These are established folks. Charlotte is going hardcore.
And, it's seeing all of these moves. We've seen Greg Tepper be absolutely serious from the absolute beginning in all of this. And all of these hires continue to add to him wanting to hit the playing ground running with all of this behind-the-scenes stuff and all this administrative stuff and all this stuff that is creating the exposure for his franchise. He's hitting it as hard as he possibly can.
It's going to be interesting to see where they go. It's going to be interesting to see where everything goes over the next few weeks and months. So we will be back tomorrow with our normal time, normal show, as best as it can be normal these days. So let us know what you want to dig into. You can tweet at us anytime at Soccer Down Here. We will be adding stuff. If there's stuff you have in mind for us to add, we'll start tackling it. It's the list is growing, and we'll have some time, obviously, to work on these things. I think right now, initially, it's just kind of getting through the shock of everything, and we'll start to dig into getting creative and adding some more extra content for y'all as we go. So keep us in mind as you think of things. We'll start to dig into it, and we'll be back in the morning, talk more soccer and music and Tom Brady and food takes and whatever else comes up in the morning. We'll be back on the SDH app then. So until then, until Tom Brady signs somewhere, mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.